Bit of a rush to get here, and but we've got you here in the end.
I'm here. Very happy to be here as well.
We've got to start your career so far. Absolutely, we all follow you on TV. We see what you do. EastEnders, probably the most kind of thing people want to talk to you about when they see you in the street.
Not anymore.
Right.
Generally, I've made 140 documentaries, mostly in hostile environments, and I've been doing that now for 25 years. It's interesting that 10 years of my life was spent basically going to a studio, like going to a sausage factory. It's the thing that people think that people talk about. But generally now, younger generations, so I've been doing it for, I'm 60 next year, and I've been doing it for 40 years, think on television. And you know, I loved the days of EastEnders. It was great. I was very naive. I was 25 when I joined, 35 when I left. And I went straight into documentary making, and really have never looked back. And I've been fortunate to travel around the world to meet some incredibly interesting people from Iraq, Syria, Libya, East Timor, Papua New Guinea, most of South and Central America, North America. A lot of programs in the UK looking at many of the issues that we have in these islands. So, very fortunate to have travelled around the world and met some incredibly interesting people, often in quite extreme circumstances.
And I'm guessing, given those documentaries and those extreme circumstances that you mentioned, there's some times I would imagine where your resilience is put to the test a little bit, and you've got to think on your feet.
Yeah, one of the things that we use, and I think I learned it on 4-5 Commando on Herrick 9. Each 6-month tour out to Afghanistan was called Herrick. So I started going out in 2006 and I stopped going out in 2012. So I was out with my home regiment, 1 Royal Anglian twice. Then I went out with 5 Scots, 1 Royal Irish, 4-5 Commando, US Marine Corps, 4-5 Commando again, and then the US Marine Corps, which is very interesting. And I was out last time with the Nursing Regiment and with the Afghan National Army, right at the end when people tried to pretend that there hadn't been conflict there because they wanted to get everybody out of there as quickly as possible. But a thing that we used to use and we were taught was a thing called trauma risk management. And quite basically, at the end of every day, whether we've been involved in a road traffic collision, whether we've interviewed someone who's been through a horrific event, for instance, I've had to interview lots of mothers who sadly have lost their children. Whether we've been shot at that day, we all sit around the table, and if we're in an Islamic country, it's open tea or whatever we're drinking, water. If it's in a country, a Western country, maybe over a beer. And we discuss the events of the day from each and every individual's perception. Because one of the biggest things that can happen forwards in PTSD is basically you having an aversion of events and maybe it isn't totally truthful because you only see it from your POV, your perspective. If you sit with a group, and even if you've got umbrage with one of those people, just say to try and get an armoured personnel carrier and someone jumped in front of you under the contact, you can say, well, mate, you jumped in front of me, that was pretty unfair because I was exposed. And if you don't get that out straight away, that can fester. And that goes for the staff room, I think. You have one of the hardest jobs. If you work in education, I think you have one of the hardest jobs that's out there, along with people who work in the National Health Service and in policing. And I think one of the things that's really important to have is transparency as quickly as possible. And sometimes that can seem abrupt, but if you're all on the same page and you know why you're talking to each other and why you're being very honest with each other, it stops snowballs. And I think that's really important. So what we do at the end of every day, whether we're in a combi van, and I travel all the way from Iraq all the way to Syria in a combi van, hiding in the bottom of it in case we got stopped at an ISIS checkpoint, end up getting to the front line and getting back. And that's a stressful situation, but I made sure that when we got to a safe house, we always stopped. We always talked through the day. We always explained how we were each feeling. And that kept the team going.
How did your school life impact your career, do you think?
Immensely. I grew up in the 70s and the 80s. I went to drama school in 82 when I was 17, 18 in London, but before that I was educated in Essex. And it was very much a one-size-fits-all approach, and if you didn't fit that particular size, then you often ended up going to the back of the class, and that's where I often sat with my head looking out the window. But I've just written a book, and I dedicate a chapter to Mr. Gollidge. I don't know if you're lucky enough, the great thing reading education is you've already been through the process, right? You must have been one teacher that inspired you, maybe there were more than one. And we're all that person to a certain individual at a certain time in our life. We may not even know that we're that inspirational character. And mine was an art teacher called Mr. Gollidge. I was pretty rubbish at art, I have to say. But he saw more than what the kids were actually drawing. There were always those very clever kids at the front of the class that were drawing perfect feathers, and I did my version of a feather. And he put it up as the best picture in the class. And that never happened to me before. And he said, because that's your interpretation of what you feel a feather should look like or feel like. And that's what art is about. And it was like a kind of revelation to me. And he realised that I was interested in photography and making films because I love TV. And he had a dark room, and he allowed me to go in there, and I learned how to develop my own photographs. And inside that dark room there were magazines, and there was one magazine from the Sunday Times about the Vietnam War and war photography. Now, how weird is that I ended up spending most of my life going to war zones and filming them and interviewing people involved in war zones. But I honestly believe that he saw potential inside me. He also wasn't my acting teacher or my drama coach, but he said, you can really act. I think there's something in there for you. You should push that. So, really honestly, without Mr. Gollidge, I would never have got a grant, I would never have got into drama school, I would never have turned to documentaries, and I wouldn't be here now. So I think you have an incredible responsibility that sometimes you probably don't you're aware of. You are touching the lives of these young seeds. And wow, what a responsibility that is. And I take my hat off to you, because I don't think I can do it.
Was there a moment when you were young where you knew you'd come to that crossroads in your life, and the drama side of it, the creative side of it, was the route you were going to go? Well,
again, because of streaming, you weren't allowed to take 2 art classes. I wanted to do art, I wanted to do drama. My mum turned around to me and said, "You'll never make me a living as an actor, you're going to have to do art, because at least you can do technical drawing or something, you're going to live it." Nice one, Mum. My mum was a hairdresser, and my father was a senior ranking member detective in the Metropolitan Police Force. So I always think when I'm doing interviews with people, I could give you a pretty good grilling and then ask you where you want to go on your holidays.
Do people treat you like you're a tough guy? Do you find that, obviously, and is that a spin-off from your grant days, or is that a spin-off from seeing the hostile environments that you've been into?
People in general?
Yeah.
I think most people get to know me quite quickly. I'm pretty honest. I wear my heart on my sleeve. Again, transparency. I mean, I'm approaching 60, as I say. And
looks well for 60, by the way, ladies.
Considering I had a bottle of red wine last night. And some square-shaped crisps.
There are other crisps available.
I think, until I know self be true was a line that Shakespeare wrote, and if you can manage to attempt that, and I think it becomes easier as you get older because you have less to hide, and also it's hard to hide. When you're younger, you want it all. No one's ever going to have it all. It's impossible to have it. Best advice my father ever gave me, and I put it at the end of the book that was written, is, I want to be happy, I want to be happy, I want to be happy. Everything that makes me happy, I want to be happy. He said, "Son, have you ever thought about content?" And I never really understood what he meant until I got to a certain age. I'm a father of 4 kids, I've been divorced once. I think what I strive for now is contentment, is to understand that not all those things are going to happen for you. You're not going to be this or that, but be happy and content to be what you have.
Anything that happened to you as a youngster growing up that changed your thinking and made you behave a little bit differently with your own kids in terms of their development and how you want to see them progress?
I think, here's a great line that I use in the book as well, that you end up trying to give your children more than you have. And then you turn around to them and you hear the words coming out, my father to me, you don't know how lucky you are! The reason that you are lucky, and the reason that child has got more than you, is because that's what you set out to achieve. You've been successful. You can't sit there and blame them, it's your fault. So, again, and that comes back to education, I can't say and stress strongly enough how important what you do is. You literally, that little rat that's coming up to you and screaming and shouting, that may have spat at you, that may have stuck a pencil in you, whatever it may have done, that's a human being in the making, and it's in your hands. And I think that is an incredible privilege, but also a potential that can go horribly, horribly wrong if it's not managed in the right way. And the one thing I can tell you is I've looked in the eyes of people. One bloke I met talked about one of the worst things I've ever experienced. I interviewed a people trafficker, a child trafficker, sex trafficker in India, a man called Mr. Khan. I won't try and bring you down too much, but I'll be very quick. On camera, he admitted to killing over 300 girls. And the question's sitting there, Justin, I know you're going to ask it, so I'll answer it now. That was the worst I've got, without having seen dead bodies all over the world, having put bodies in body bags. And I literally said, this is coming for a translator. The interpreter was a criminal psychologist as well as being a brilliant translator. And I could see the tears rolling down her face, and she was getting the translation before me. And I said, are you really admitting? Because he knew he could, because he was going off, we're in the Sundarbans in southern Italy, India. And it's the only time I have been unable to find any sympathy for a human being. I can always find a reasoning, and I go back to that child sticking the pencil in you. That child isn't necessarily doing that because he wants to hurt you. There are some other things going on that you often know. But that's the only time that I lost it. And I said, get him out of my sight, I'm going to kill him. And I could have killed him, he had 2 bodyguards, but I still did it. But we just looked at each other, and her and I just pulled our eyes out. There was nothing else. We talked about resilience. Episodes like that build resilience. You're only here for a brief look around. We all end up as dust, sadly. Others may believe in an afterlife. I sadly don't. But if you want to have my lowest moment, that's my lowest moment. But from those moments, you can become stronger. And we as a team, my team became far stronger from that experience. We're all in teams. I've got a sound man, a cameraman that have been to Afghanistan, Iraq to say we've been held hostage for only not, so I shouldn't say in front of you, but only for 48 hours. But that was a long 48 hours. I could never have done what Suwaid's done. I don't know if I'd ever come through something like that. But it's a long time just to be under the control of other people for just that short period of time. God knows how you deal with it. But all those experiences make you stronger. And that child turning on you continuously will make you stronger. But one of the things I do think that we're missing at the moment, in the aid for speed and the aid to make money or you to be more efficient, we've stopped talking to each other. We've stopped communicating with each other. We use tablets, we use mobile phones. Everybody sits on their own, they pull this thing out and they're looking at it and doing this. And I think if you're working as a team, cohesively, you've got to be looking at each other in the eye. It's not down a Zoom call, it's actually in the same room. Because we get feelings from each other that are lost in emails. And you can work out what's really going on with a human being if you're in the same room. It's not that easy if you're separated by hundreds of miles. And I think, the staff room, the canteen for police officers and ambulance drivers, they've been sort of eroded and pushed aside. It's a vending machine. It's something that happens immediately. You get your shot of caffeine and you're on to the next job. And that really isn't what they're there for, as far as I'm concerned. They are places where you trim. They're places where you trauma risk management. They're the places where you can find out what's really going on. They're the places where you can offload. They're the places where you can begin to understand why your colleague is behaving like that. Because everybody in this room is facing some challenge that no one else in the room knows anything about. And that's not my line, that's Robin Williams' line. It's true, and that's what I always bear in mind when they're going to a prison to interview someone, or they're going to a hospital to interview someone, whether I'm working with my sound man that's grumpy as that morning. I know that there is something going on, and I have to accept that I don't know what it is, and it'll be a time before that comes out, but I've got to forgive them for that there and then, because if I don't, our days, we're just going to clash with the day. So that's, as I'm sort of like team leader, but it is an autonomy, and you know, you've just got to bear in mind when you're a team leader that other things don't always go your way, but that's part of being a team leader. You take that on, you take that responsibility on board because you are the team.
You'll see in the military side of it, it's all about evaluation. Everything's always evaluated. You've got those lines of communication are always
until they go horribly wrong. Yes.
Right, okay.
There is, you can have plan B, C, and D, but you never got an F or a D. You know.
But I think when you talk about the transition from that into teaching, I think it would be probably safe to say that a lack of time and the demands and the pressures that are faced by anyone in the education system, that time is being eaten away and eroded all the time, where you look back and you reflect and you evaluate. That's probably more important than anything.
Absolutely. Again, I'll just go back to that same thing, because you can't put a price on human interaction. That's what we used to do. We used to sit around fires and we were hunter-gatherers. That's where you relate properly to each other. And to dismiss that or take that out of the equation creates problems and issues as far as I'm concerned. And I think more time should be spent on working at how we can interact with each other properly, face to face, than doing it via emails and Zoom calls.
I think you said in your podcast your dad wasn't the greatest of communicators. Is that something that all mentioned, maybe have a bit of a nod to say, right, well, how can I improve how I communicate? How can I open that dialogue and make things a little bit better?
I think that's changing. I think societally we're changing. You know, look at the demographic here, it's overwhelmingly female, and I grew up, my mum was a hairdresser, so I grew up in a hairdressing salon. And, you know, women find it, I think, often a lot easier to talk about their innermost feelings and their dark feelings than a lot of men do, because there's a bravado and a machismo attached to it. But I think that's changing. You know, footballers kiss each other. They have been doing that since the 70s. So, you know, maybe we should embrace the fact that footballers, who are seen by many people, including my kids, as the heroes, the absolute top of the top, that we should be a bit more openly friendly with each other, more honest. And I think the most important thing that I've learned in my life is that I think of the way, I'm not a trained journalist, I'm an actor. And when I do interviews, I don't try to look down on the person. I'm not trying to show them how clever I am, how much I know about their country, and what they may have experienced. So I don't look up to them pretending to be ignorant because I want them to tell me all. Do it at eye level. Look into someone and look straight into their eyes, the windows to the soul, and ask them that question. And do it in a way that hopefully your audience are coming on the journey with you. That you're asking the questions popping into the audience's head, just as this is popping into their head. And to be as honest as you possibly can. I mean, I've done some dreadful things in my life growing up. None of them I'm very proud of. But you get to a certain point in life, and sometimes it's through cathartic experiences of being in warfare, etc., that change you. And we're all capable of change. You know, honesty is the best possible policy. It may be hard, and that's why I say, get it out as quickly as you possibly can. Don't let it fester.
Have you ever had a moment where you maybe thought, I might not see tomorrow, given some of the circumstances that you put yourself in?
Oh, if you're doing a 2-month tour in Afghanistan, people are dying sadly around you, both Taliban and many civilians. There's always the option, and we all know it, that we might not see the sunlight. There were times when the guy next to me got shot. People say, but I've got a bodyguard. We've never had bodyguard. We can't afford them for starters. And also, they bring in CP, bring in all sorts of issues. I'm going into a favela in Rio. If the don of the favela is giving you coverage, saying he wants you in there, then you have to go on the trust of that human being. And also, by going in there without that and showing that you are part of it, that can often I must have upset. Well, in terms of numbers, so if anybody leaves, I know I've said it wrong. You basically are relying on human trust, and people respond to that. Particularly money, what else are we going to do? So yeah, so I think one of the most important things that I've learned over the years, particularly getting into hostile environments, is that no one's going to jump in front of it for you. You're very much, if you're prepared to go there, then it's down to you.
Conscious we want to take some questions from the floor, an opportunity to ask Ross anything you want, whether or not it relates work-wise or to some of his exploits so far. Anybody want to throw anything in? It's always a little, oh yeah, we got one already.
Just in terms of your well-being, Ross, as run a well-being sort of conference, how do you chart? What is it that you do to maintain your mental and emotional well-being? Just back to the
yeah,
is this
trim? Apart from trim, I exercise. I was in the train on the way up here last night. I spoke to Robbo, who was my RSM on my first tour. I stay in contact with nearly all the guys that I've been, not all of them, but a lot of the people that, particularly when they were bad days. So staying in contact, continuously talking. Sometimes it is macho, chat, and other times it's quite deep and it's quite tearful. So exercise for me is my thing. I couldn't play 18 holes of golf. With three strangers wandering around for like 4 hours. I'd be used to the golf 6, but I wouldn't be hitting balls with them. So exercise for me, I still do martial arts, I still do yoga. I've got a younger family that keeps me really busy, and also that's that other thing, it's not always, when you're young, it's about you, isn't it? And rightly so. And I think young people face more challenges now than they've ever faced. I mean, we have one thing, a television in the corner. Now we've got laptops, Game Boys, and it's kind of continuously asking to get more likes and more likes and more likes. There's a massive issue with that, and I have no idea how we overcome that. But for me, it is literally family, exercise, and getting the next job. That keeps me quite busy. So that's it, man. And understanding how lucky I am, understanding to be where I am is a privilege. Having you in front of me is a privilege, and I'm honoured to be here. So thank you for listening so far.
Any advice for these guys on maybe how
Ask
to deal?
me a question. Anything, honestly.
What
Yes,
A future project.
I'm just about to go to the United States of America to interview members of the 5 families of the American. Once I finish that, I'm flying down to Colombia. I've already spent 4 weeks in La Picosa prison in Bogota on another project. People are now smoking a thing called bazooka, which I've seen some things in my time. I've made cocaine in the Vai Valley in the Amazon rainforest. But for people to use so powder cocaine, the wash down is crack cocaine. Now the residue from that is being mixed with brick dust and smoke. And unfortunately, what happens there often that ends up here. I look at bricks there. In downtown Bogota, you can see scrapes in the brick where they're taking the brick dust out and smoking it. So that was pretty shocking. But I'm going from there. But I'm going out this time with. I'm going to Atletico Tamarca. I'm going out with the Colombian Special Forces for 2 weeks on top of the American bit to just talk about organised crime groups and how they relate back to the UK.
How do you get the phone number of the big mafia in America? Because I'm guessing it's not in the phone book or on Google.
Interestingly enough, if you're on 140 documentaries and you've never ever compromised anybody, which I haven't, they often come to you. They want to tell their story. It's cathartic for them. People look for kudos in all sorts of different ways. All these guys are ex-mafia, I have to say. They're not present mafia because I wouldn't be doing it because it would be far too dangerous. And they wouldn't want to talk to me anyway, right? So these people are maybe ex or the ones who are working with agencies like the police or the army or special forces, etc. So yeah, no, they don't often give out their phone numbers, but it's bizarre that once you get into that kind of channel of work, how much more people who are in that area want to talk to you.
I can remember seeing one of your documentaries, and I think you might have been in Africa somewhere, and somebody holds up what looks like an AK-47, and they're pointing it directly at you. There's obviously a language barrier to contend with as well. And you never flinched.
Get on the floor, and it was in Papua New Guinea, and there was more. Well, I wasn't worried about the guns too much, because I think the guns were going to work, the shotgun might have. But it was the spears.
Right.
And the bows and arrows. In Papua, up in the highlands of Papua New Guinea, and to this day I don't know why I grabbed hold of the rifle and pushed it away, but we knew that those people had been responsible for doing some pretty heinous things. And I thought, if you go down the ground now, you won't be able to get up again. So I'd rather have a bullet than a spear, I guess. Was that the reasoning behind it?
You thought that at that particular moment.
And afterwards, really interestingly, you know, I don't think you've been burgled, but there's a kind of feeling that you feel kind of like betrayed and bereft, and then you get quite angry about it afterwards. That's exactly how I felt about that experience.
Any more questions?
Any plans for Palestine or Ukraine?
I've been to both of those places. I was in the Ukraine in 2017, 2018, Mariupol, which eventually got smashed, and I was there when they were preparing for what they thought was an oncoming Russian onslaught. It took a number of years before that happened. But we still managed to go. It's a true story. We drove, we had got a high car from Kiev, or Kiev as it was called there, it's like, we don't call it Paris, do we? I know it's a sign of solidarity, and I'm all with it. But we drove out of Mariupol, where they'd mined the bridge even then. So they'd put like something out the second on board, they'd put explosives under the bridge, the river that comes in from the Azov Sea. And we drove up through Russian lines, unknowingly, thinking about getting it out as soon as you possibly can, expressing it. It's often quite dark humour. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's now considered un-PC to put that kind of people sort of galaxy humour. I'm not sure that's the right terminology these days. But dark, you know, humour that may not be fitting in certain circumstances. There should be a place to offload that. That's what that staff group to me would be about, the canteen, the minibus for us, or whatever it may be, the armoured personnel carrier. You have, as a cohort, things that only you can discuss. Those caseworkers will have experienced pretty dark stuff. They have to offload that with people who understand it. There are a lot of issues around PTSD with servicemen that came back from Afghanistan that went to the National Health Service to get help. And that person they were talking to had no understanding of what it was like to be on a tour, no understanding what it's like to pick up a friend and put it in the body bag, or him in the body bag, or to work in Camp Bastion and amputate legs every day. So it's very important that you offload to the right people in the right way, and that's sometimes quite difficult. There's never going to be again, you know, a bespoke unit that particularly deals with that particular area. So it's your colleagues that should be looking out for you, and that's how you create better team. That's how you create better bonds with the people that you work with.
One final question? Who wants to ask the last one?
When you're in a situation that's quite tricky, what do you have going through your mind in order to calm yourself down and sort of defuse that situation with your own fight or flight response?
I think anything that you do enough, you get used to. I used to have my lid, my body armour, my boots and my Bergen packed by the door of One Beach Moor Road, Battersea, and I could get a phone call with 12 to 14 hours notice to be advised to go, because we'd fit in the slots, the envelopes that there were troops on. And every tour I came back from, I swore I'd be a better person, that I wouldn't get upset when that person shoved me from the heels in the supermarket. I wouldn't be upset when someone jumped the queue at Tesco's, which lasted for about 3 weeks until I came back. I think you have to be not so hard on yourself often. I think you can be really, really hard on yourself. But in terms of keeping yourself cool under fire, no one's cool under fire. I've got mates who are at Hereford now and Paul and are out waiting. And they hadn't actually got into Egypt yet. They were sticking scaffolding poles, propping them up. And all I could see were a pair of flip-flops. And this guy was tunnelling. And that was the way that they brought it, still do, well, they used to bring stuff into Gaza. But in that one day, I went and met a suicide bomber, loaded up, ready to go, and tried to explain to him that not everyone in Israel wanted, Palestinians to be removed from the face of the earth. That's really hard to convince myself of every day. I also went out and made an IED with Islamic Jihad, and at the end of it, I ended up in a rocket making factory, and we went in to a garage, we'd go down the tunnel, come out into a restaurant, we'd get into another vehicle, drive to another place, because all of it was being watched. And my sound man Tim had really had enough by this point. He didn't want to go down the tunnels, he said it didn't like the suicide bomber, he didn't want to go anywhere near the eye. Human beings, we are quite interesting, quite fascinating. And it takes sometimes quite a shocking moment for you to realise who you are, why you're here, and what you're doing. And I will say this, as I'm obviously winding up now, I just want to say thank you for listening. You do an incredible job, and you have an incredible community, and hats off to you. Thank you very much.